Good morning and welcome to the Core Connection. I'm Mira Rubin here with you on Enlightened World Network. And today's topic is decision making. We often like to consider ourselves rational people making reasoned decisions. And I think it'll be fun to dig in and see if that's really the case or what else might be at work in our decision making to get some greater insight. But before we get started with that, let's take a minute or two to get present. Let's take a deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And imagine clean, crisp oxygen flooding into your lungs, flowing into your bloodstream, nourishing all your cells, all your organs, bringing vital life energy to your body and being. And as you exhale, exhale any tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's take another deep breath in through your nose and hold it. And this time, imagine brilliant, bright light, lighting you up from the inside out, illuminating, electrifying, and energizing all your electrons, all your molecules, all your cells, and lighting you up from the inside out, creating this brilliant beam of energy from your heart out into the world. And as you exhale, exhale any remaining tension, stress, negativity, fatigue. And now let's just gently press our palms together and very softly rub your fingers against your palms to feel the deliciousness of that sensation, the tickling and the tingling, and allow that to bring you present right here, right now, into this remarkable physical form that enables you to experience life. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome, Rosalind. Welcome to everybody else who's joining us. So good to have you here with us this morning. And so we're talking today about decision making. And we often think that we make rational and reasoned decisions. And I am inclined to have us talking about that we make emotional decisions perhaps, and then find rational justification for those decisions, just as a hypothesis that we get to play with today. So what brought this up for me is I've been looking and dreaming really of RV life for a while now, getting an RV and tootling around the country and doing interviews for Sustainability Now, which is my podcast. And, just getting the opportunity to travel and see different places and have some wonderful experiences. So the other day, I got to look at an RV that met a bunch of the criteria that I had for myself, and it's a used vehicle. And anyway, it was really interesting. It was interesting to see my decision-making process around this thing. So Rosalind says, yes, I agree with the latter. We look for validation to support our decisions. 100%. 100%. We make decisions and then we justify them. I think that that's probably really true. Like we get a gut reaction and then we look to justify our decisions. And the thing is that a lot of times when we end up in trouble, it's because we have ignored our gut, that we've overridden whatever our gut decision was, trying to be reasonable and rational. So anyway, I went to see this RV. My first reaction to it was, oh boy, this, it needs a lot of love. And it wasn't like, oh, this is it. It was some trepidation and reservation. And I went and I looked at it and I took a bunch of pictures and I checked everything out. And I even made a credit application to see if I would be able to get it financed. And then I had the opportunity. I was iffy. I was really iffy about it. And the truth is that there are all kinds um, of concessions or whatever. There would be all kinds of actions I'd have to take to facilitate this thing happening. But anyway, it was really interesting because I had a couple conversations, I got more educated, and based on those conversations, I was able to make a very clear decision that this was not the choice for me at this moment. But the whole thing is really interesting because, I mean, interesting to me anyway, hopefully to you too. Hi, Lisa. Welcome, welcome. We're talking about decision making. Uh, I think it's really useful for us to recognize that as reasonable as we try to be, um, we typically will make our decisions and then find ways to justify those decisions. And I just find it fascinating, you know, like I as I was feeling into this whole possibility of this RV for myself, you know, it didn't feel great. It just didn't feel great. And then I found all kinds of reasons to validate that that feeling, to be able to make that choice and gain clarity around the choice. So I wonder in your life, like when you look at decisions that you've made, what are you basing those decisions on? You know, I was talking with a friend who had an event that they were invited to, and they really didn't want to go. They really, really didn't want to go. And there were considerations of other family members and who did want to go to this whole thing. And it was a big step for this person to honor their gut, to honor their own feeling, and to honor what was best for them. And what enabled them to make the decision was really, really a breakthrough for them to honor themselves, if that makes any sense. So I'm wondering, like when you are making decisions, big decisions. So we make decisions about partners, right? We make decisions about jobs. We make decisions about purchases. I know that as I look back on decisions in my life, there are times when it's just like clear and crisp and bam, I know where I'm going. I know what my decision is. I know what my, I don't even have to question it. I'm like all in alignment. And then there are other times when I'm conflicted. And so with these moments that we're conflicted, typically we go to our heads rather than our hearts, or rather than feeling into our bodies, because we do have a deeper intelligence that goes beyond the rational. When we get gut feelings, it's not necessarily that we're getting a psychic connection, although that can be too. What's going on is that we have perception that exists for us on other than conscious levels. We have a very much greater capacity to perceive things than we recognize, than processes through our conscious awareness. And when we get a gut feeling about something, what's happening is that all this information, I think most often anyway, all this information is getting synthesized on an other than conscious level. And and creating this response, this gut feeling that is information, it's feedback, it's letting us know what, it's giving us feedback on this collected information. And when we talk about being connected, we're talking about being connected to this field of information, that there is this living field of information all around us all the time. And so when we quiet our chatter and presence ourselves, we often pick up all kinds of information that we wouldn't otherwise be present to. Good morning, Dido. So good to have you here with us. Welcome. So we're talking about decision making, and actually we're beyond decision making. We're talking about perception as well. So I'm finding it very, very interesting. I know that we talk about the veil thinning and that we have access to more connection and information that we might otherwise have had. And I find it really interesting to notice that I'm lately picking up on stuff psychically, I'll say, because it's another sense, another awareness, being able to speak things that are really relevant in a context that I wouldn't otherwise have known. So Rosalind says, I'm applying for a supervisor position. Wow, congratulations. That's a big step, even just to apply. So Rosalind goes on to say, I don't feel like I have all the skills yet, and generalize that I don't want to manage people. In reality, I do want to work with people. Wish me luck. Applications are due next week. So congratulations. And I invite you to really check in. We're talking about decision making, right? And lots of times, even with promotions and things like that, jobs, we often look at what it looks like on paper and convince ourselves that that would be perfect for us. And then we're not necessarily tuning in to our feelings, our notions about things. Now, it could be that our gut reaction about something is there because, of lack of self-esteem, or, if you're saying you don't feel like you have all the skills yet, I invite you to look at what skills you do have. And maybe you have some of the skills that you think are required. You just have those skills or have exercised those skills in a different context than in a work context, perhaps. Maybe you have skills that you've applied in life that apply to this position, but just not in the context of a professional setting. So, and you say that you don't want to manage people, and in reality, you do want to work with people. So maybe there's an insight there about management style, rather than being a hierarchical management style. Maybe you're a peer type leader, where you lead in arm with people rather than out in front, for instance. And that's probably a really good opportunity, good insight for you to be able to have as you go into this application process, is to look at what is your management style. And you don't have to have had a management position in order to have a management style. You've most likely had interactions with people in your life or done projects in your life, and you get a sense of how you work with people. So there are insights available for you out of that. And, look at what is the lifestyle impact of this job change. Oftentimes people will go for a promotion because it's more money, and maybe there's some other perks, and rather than that it's something that they would really enjoy doing. So I congratulate you for taking the step to apply, and I invite you to also look inside to see and feel, how does that feel? How does that, can you feel yourself in that role? Does it feel like it's something expansive to you? Does it feel like your body's contracting? Um, these are important things to be alert to in our decision making. So what we're talking about here is engaging additional senses in making your decision, not like what we think things should be, not by just moving ahead with our social assumptions without questioning them, because we're kind of conditioned to be climbing the ladder, right? And if uh, people often get promoted to a position that they're not happy and that isn't a good fit, just because that's the next step. And so I'm not saying that that's the case here at all, Rosalind. I'm just inviting you to feel into what the role might be and how you might be able to experience joy within that role, if indeed you would experience joy within that role. So I think that's a good exercise. And I think when we're faced with big decisions, we get to look at what are the ways, what are the things that tip that decision. So for instance, with me with this RV, I was kind of a little queasy about it, on first glance. Then I was inside and walking around and looking at what it would take to make it feel better for me, actually, is what I was looking at. Like I could spruce it up by doing this, that, or the other thing. And then I was looking, well, what would it take to do that? And what would the reality of having this thing be like for me? And as I felt more and more into that, it was daunting. I literally felt kind of queasy about it now that I look back at it. I wasn't excited about it, for one. And then when I spoke with a mechanic friend who told me that it could end up being quite the money pit, that was the thing that finally put me over the edge to say, no, this is not what I need at this moment. I don't, it would be a huge inconvenience in a lot of ways. And I'm not in love with it. And really, I think the foundation, true decision was made by the fact that I wasn't in love with it, by the gut feeling. It was just like, no, no. And then I needed to justify that decision, so it's really, really interesting to recognize how we think we are so reasonable, that's a valid decision because of X, Y, and Z. And rather than saying it just doesn't feel right. And I think that there's a knowingness. We have a knowingness when we tune in. We really truly do have a knowingness about so much more than we give ourselves credit for. It's like, and then we override that knowingness. It's like I have a not great feeling about this person as a client. I don't know that I would be able to serve them as fully, but I need the money. So what am I going to do? Do I take on that client? And maybe we take on that client and it's a world of hurt, or it's a lot of frustration. for me and the client. I can gratefully say that I haven't been in that situation. That was just an example, but we have a richer knowing, and I guess what we get to do is have enough experience with that knowing to finally honor it, or eventually hopefully honor it. I have overridden my gut feelings enough in the past with um, consequences that I have learned to pay attention, and to honor those feelings, even if I don't necessarily understand what's going on about that. And it can be really useful to say, okay, so what's going on? What, and you may or may not come to some understanding about what's going on underneath those gut feelings. So Lisa says, when we were looking for the house, the realtor asked, "What are you looking for? How will you know you found it?" I then explained, when I walk in, I get a feeling and I know this is my house. That's got to make a realtor crazy, Lisa. And that's really the truth of it, right? That's really the truth of it. So I have an example like that. I was looking for apartments, and I was looking at all these different apartments. And one of my criteria was that it had to have an awesome kitchen. And this is so funny. So everywhere, all these apartments, I would look at, well, what's the kitchen like? That was primary in my focus. And then I found the place where I'm currently living, and believe it or not, I can't believe it. I've been here 20 years. 20 years. It's amazing. I've never lived anywhere in my life 20 years, but I've lived in this apartment 20 years. But I walked in, I fell in love with this place. It was like, oh my gosh, and in fact, even before I had come into this apartment, I had driven by the building, which is an old house. I had driven by the building and I said, I want to live there. And then a couple days later, I saw an ad for a rental in this building. So it's bizarre, bizarre, bizarre. And then I walked in and I was like, this is my place. And it was so interesting because there was somebody else, a mom with a child or two, I don't even remember, who was also looking at the apartment at the same time. And I was like, no, 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 this is my place. And then I was telling my mom about it. And my mom said, so what's the kitchen like? And I said, you know what? I don't know. I don't even remember what the kitchen is like, because the whole place was my place. So to your point, it is so funny. And the kitchen is teeny tiny. And yet this has been the place for me for all this time, which is just remarkable. And I still love it here. So Lisa, it's so funny, you could have told the realtor, I could have told the realtor, it has to have a nice kitchen, has to be have a nice kitchen, and I never would have seen this apartment, which is really funny. So I love your answer. And I feel sorry for your realtor because they don't really know what the context is going to be to show you places, but or what I guess you found the house. So that's really exciting, but it had to be a challenge for your realtor. Anyway, it's really, really exciting that you found the place that you love. Rosalind says, RV road trip, what will your destinations and choices be guided by? So my vision for this RV thing, one of the visions is beauty, natural beauty, and to be able to see the beauty in the country. Another part of it is to be connecting with people all over the country who are doing really cool things in the realm of sustainability and alternative energy and food sources. So, you know, a community, I'd want to be able to tool around and do interviews around the country with all these people doing really remarkable things. And the other thing is that I imagine being able, you know, ultimately when I'm ready to build my own little house, I imagine being able to live in the RV while that's happening. So Lisa says, my realtor was wonderful. It sounds like, congratulations. That's, you know, to have a wonderful experience while you're looking for a house. That's icing on the cake, and how delightful for you. I'm really happy to hear that. So anyway, that's today, decision making. Look at how you make decisions. Look at what the process is. And I invite you, when you're making decisions, to connect to your heart and your gut, and not just be just in your head, because then the decisions that you make are going to be much more in alignment with who you are. So yeah, Rosalind says traveling, interviewing people, cool. Yeah, I'm excited. I've been dreaming of this for years. So it feels like it's getting closer and closer. Anyway, so much love to you. I'm Mira Rubin. This is the Core Connection. And I go live here each weekday morning on Enlightened World Network on their Facebook page. And please check out the other awesome programming. Oh, Dido says, I'm going to look at a tiny house tomorrow, so I'll take this approach. Good job, Dido. Yeah, when you feel it, you'll know it. That's also awesome. I'm so excited for you. I want to hear. So please, please let me know how it goes. That's so exciting. So Lisa says, I see a CNN show in your future. You guys are the best. Anyway, have an amazing weekend. And I just so appreciate you and your engagement in these conversations. It really lightens up my day. You know, it's a great way to start the day, and I'm so grateful to you all for that. So until next time, look at your decisions, pay attention to your heart and your gut. And I hope to see you back here again real soon. Lots and lots of love.